Are you a play up guy? Do you play your kid up? I am a play my kid up sort of guy. And what ends up happening when you play up is it exposes your weaknesses. Last year when we moved out here from Connecticut, I put my son on a basketball team that was 4th and 5th graders. Now, keep in mind that in Connecticut, when he was in 2nd grade playing, wasn't exactly high-level ball, and I was working afternoons, evenings, as well as weekends, and it made it a little bit more difficult to work with him on his game. And so he was, good for that area, but we hadn't really expanded, hadn't really played up in that area. So then we move out to California, and he goes from like 0 to 60, not just playing against kids in this area, but against older kids. And it wasn't good. It was a walking turnover. He wanted to be a point guard, but he couldn't dribble, pass, or shoot. Outside of that, at least he played hard and could defend. And it was to the point where he would tell anybody who would listen, I don't really like basketball. And he didn't really like basketball, not because he didn't like basketball. He didn't like basketball because he wasn't good at basketball. So this year, he still plays up some, plays with his own age group some, and he's better. He's better. I use the playing up analogy, and I am a big proponent of playing up, playing against older kids. Because when you play against older kids, it exposes your weaknesses. Obviously, strength and size is going to be a weakness, but the finer points that you're able to get away with missing when you're playing against relatively average level of comp at your age, you just can't get away with when you play against better, older players. That's what's happening to Ben Simmons. It's not just that NBA guys are older than him, but the playoffs are essentially like playing up a level. It's almost a different sport. The attention to detail, the scouting reports, the physicality, the fatigue, the crowds, the officials, everything is different. Everything is more intense. And the lazy passes and bad possessions and easy shots that you're able to get away with when you play a Wednesday night in Atlanta against a Hawks team that simply is trying to get through the year and get their young players experience, in comparison to playing against a Raptors team that has been waiting for years for LeBron James to leave the Eastern Conference and smells blood in the water, is night and day. Ben Simmons has been awful in this series. Non-impactful. Last night, 7 points, 4 assists. He had 5 turnovers. He only took 5 field goals. He made his 1 free throw that he took. He can't get to the line. He can't get to the rim. And we know that he's not going to take nor make deep jump shots. Ben Simmons against the Raptors in total, right? This is 5 games in. It's a small sample size, but it's a relatively decent little chunk of sample size, right? We're at probably about 1/10, 1/12 of the season. 9.4 points per game, 4.6 assists per game. He's only taking 8.5 field goals a game. He's taken 4 total free throws, and last night was the first free throw that he made. Remember, this is a kid that averages 17 a game, 17.5 assists a game. He takes, on average, 12 field goals a game and attempts 5 free throws a game. Now, some of it is matchups. Some of it is Kawhi Leonard. Right? You want to know what the best look like? This is what it looks like. And whether it comes down to you exposing kind of your local rec team to AAU ball or you playing your AAU team up an age group, whatever it is, if you're a parent, you completely get what I'm talking about. Now, my son also plays baseball. And in his Mustang League, he's one of the 3 or 4 best players. And when he played with his travel team, he was the best player on a bad team. They sprinkled in some older players and played in an older division. And on Sunday, he had his worst game as a baseball player. He was all screwed up and crossed up and swinging at air and watching strikes, and it was a little too fast for him. He went from being virtually unhittable in his own league to very much hittable. But it's okay because he's only 10. He's not a professional. And it's expected when you step up in weight class, right? This is not what we expected from Ben Simmons. And the exposure of Simmons, the exposure of Joel Embiid, while we've seen this in the past from teams, you got to feel the pain before you taste the champagne. We get that. But the idea that this is just a weight class that they are not close to being ready to compete at is a little bit alarming. Right? It's a little bit alarming. Because the thing I take the most pride in, for example, my son is, we get in the car and he says he's embarrassed and I tell him, all right, dude, we're going to go back to work. We're going to fix it. And eventually, we'll be able to hit all those guys. But this is what happened to Simmons last year when he faced the Celtics. This is what's happening this year against the Raptors. And there appears to be regression, not progression. And that's a problem. Look, I'm not closing the book on Ben Simmons' ability to be a superstar. I'm not diminishing the fact that when Joel Embiid isn't right, they're a completely different team. Or the fact that they went from surrounding Simmons and Embiid with great shooters and instead went top heavy with Tobias Harris and Jimmy Butler, two guys who need the ball, and it depleted their bench and depleted their assets in terms of volume of shooters. I'm not going to diminish. These are not guys that play in a vacuum. Everything does in fact matter. But doesn't it feel like to anybody else, like if you turn it on, you're like, that guy was the rookie of the year last year. Granted, not really a rookie, but whatever. That guy was the rookie of the year, a dominant 6'10" player, the likes of which we hadn't seen since a LeBron or a Magic. You know, I knew he grew up idolizing Lamar Odom, but God, he just hasn't looked impactful at all. He's one of those, why do they have him out there, guys? And to me, it looks very, very much like a guy who is like a guy who's playing in a weight class that he wasn't in fact ready for.